think, all the problems that come with being a human with a human brain, how we can do a better job of navigating through all the madness, lies, and frauds and mistakes that we all make over and over and over just because we're human. We're basically these prehistoric people with these brains that evolved in Africa, over thousands and thousands of years. Here we are in this plastic, concrete, high-tech world with all these things coming at us constantly, all these, great deals and offers and promises and fears and dangers. And it's overwhelming to us. Our brains never evolved to be able to handle this well and consistently get the right answer. And so the best thing we can do is understand how the brain works, how it's all put together, how it evolved, and how subconscious biases conspire to fool us all the time. I mean, they're not trying to hurt us. The way our brain works is great. Memory, for example, is great. But if you understand, memory's not really supposed to be some little stenographer inside your skull that's faithfully recording everything you experience in your life for playback or for you to refer to and get absolute, 100% accurate details of past events. That's not what memory even is. Memory evolved so that we could better predict things in the future and make plans for the future. So memory serves that purpose. It doesn't care about being completely accurate. So when you understand things like that, or vision, most people think you look around and you see the real world around you. No, you don't. You look around, images come in, zap down the optic nerve, go into the brain. The brain sorts, edits, decides on its own without consulting with you, the conscious you, what's important, what you need to really see, the important information, because you can't see it all. It's too much information. So then you see this reflection of reality, very little of what's really there, and your vision can be colored by belief, influence. You may see things that should be there, probably most of the time are there, might be there, kind of could be there, but isn't there. But you'll see it as if it is, because your brain is trying to help you. It's trying to predict. It's trying to say, hey, there's a tiger over there, and that weird-looking shadow, that might be a tiger. So watch out, go the other way or something. Even if a tiger's not there, it can help you out. Maybe a tiger is there, so it can help you out. But so many things. I mean, there's many, many things that our brains do that 99.999% of the people on this planet have no clue about. They just don't know because, sadly, we don't teach it to kids in school. It's just not a big part of pop culture, and that's why we have such a crazy world. That's why we've got people in America, in Europe, running over to join ISIS and fight for ISIS, for example. Nobody who was even a half-ass critical thinker would join ISIS, regardless of religious and belief and all that. They wouldn't do it just because, the people who lead ISIS think the world is 6,000 years old, and they cite prophecies of some battle, some apocalyptic battle that's supposed to happen in a little town in Syria very soon, with no evidence, no logic behind any of this. So if you can just think, you'd never get on the plane to go fight for those guys. And so many things. You're a financial guy, financial investments. People walk in to see their financial advisor, and just because this man or woman is dressed in expensive clothes, sitting behind a mahogany desk, speaks with a fancy accent, has a Harvard degree on the wall, they're willing to turn over their life savings to that person without second guessing, without double checking, without making sure that they're not being unduly influenced by the human weakness we all have for authority figures. We're just so ready to be subjective when we interpret somebody as being more powerful or more having a higher rank than we do. You got to know all these things, and there's so many of them. But in the book, I survey the ones I think are most important, things we got to understand. And I explain that it's not going to make you a perfect human. It's not going to make you a millionaire. It's not going to make you immune from getting injured and falling down and making mistakes and screwing up. It's all going to happen, but it makes you safer. It makes you more efficient. It sets you up to lead a much, much more efficient, productive, and safer life when you understand the human brain and what's going on in you.
Well, it's curious. Would you agree with the statement? I kind of think of it as the brain was just good enough so that we could survive. Because that's all it needed to be.
Well, that's what evolution's all about.
Right.
Everything just good enough. I mean, because if you think about it, the way life evolves, there's no forward planning. There's there's nobody in charge. It's natural selection. It's genetic mutations. It's time just carving out based on the particular stresses of the environment, the conditions of an environment. It's carving out these life forms. And there's, like I said, there's no forethought, there's no planning. It's just about getting by with what you need today. If you can't, you die. You're extinct. Gone.
Well,
if you can, you keep going. And something very important people got to understand, it all has to happen on the fly. You can't put, for example, a primate brain, you can't put it in dry dock and re-engineer it and design it in logical ways. No, you have to keep living each moment, each day. So that brain, every part of that body, the brain, whatever, has to continually serve that being, that species, or you go extinct. So that's why we have these weird, quirky, overlapping systems and things, prostates and weird places and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's because it's all got to keep working, got to keep going. That's why, arms can become wings and legs can become flippers. All this stuff, you got to make do with what you got.
We had a situation, my wife and I, several years ago. We were at one of the amazing meeting conferences in Las Vegas. And when it was over, we're in the airport waiting to go back. And in case my wife listens, because sometimes she do, hi, honey, I love you. It's a good story, but sometimes she gets tired of hearing it. We're in the airport, and she said, so our brains, our memories aren't exactly what happened, because we had listened to a talk by Steven Pinker. And the thing I said to her was, yes, honey, that's true. I've explained that to you 50 times before. And she said, but this time it wasn't you. And I think that encapsulates the relationships human beings have, because when you're with somebody all the time, you can tend to say, okay, I've heard what they've said. They don't need to repeat it anymore. But you hear something from a new source or a second source or a third source, and sometimes I see religion like that. I can't talk to most Christians and in one session explain to them and convince them that their religion is wrong, but if 10 people or 20 people, 30 people do it, and one of your earlier books was 50 Reasons People Give for Believing in God, give me a couple of those. What are those reasons?
Yeah, that book, that was my first book back in 2008, which is still amazingly doing very well around the world. Very popular book. It's a general address of justifications for religious belief. The title is 50 Reasons People Give for Believing in a God, any God. It's not specific.
A God.
And
isn't there just one God?
It kind of grew out of my travels around the world. I've traveled through about 30 countries on 6 continents, and I have many interests. Religion has always been one of them. I have like a history anthropology background, so you can't ignore religion. It's so important to us. And what I notice in talking with Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, all around the world, what I discovered is that they're all reaching in the same little small grab bag of justifications for their belief. And this is interesting because most religious people live in almost total psychological isolation with their beliefs. Christians just don't. A typical Christian doesn't know anything about Hinduism, doesn't know anything about Islam, and vice versa. Hindus don't know a whole lot about Christians in South Carolina. Why they believe and why they're so confident. And it turns out, for example, Americans will know this, but many Christians will say, here in America will say, well, I know that, Christianity's real. Of course it is, because I've prayed. Jesus changed my life. I was sick and I prayed and I was healed. And guess what? Hindus say the same thing. They pray, they get healed. They pray, their life has changed, but they're praying to Hindu gods, totally different. Muslims will tell you, well, I know obviously Allah is the one real God and the Quran is the book, because I feel it inside. It just can't be made up. It's real. I feel it. And you know what? Mormons say the same thing. They feel it. They know it. It's a deep gut feeling. They know that Book of Mormon is real. They feel it deep. But anyway, I go on and on and show that these justifications are all the same. And so what it points to, the sensible conclusion here is that, it's hard to imagine. In fact, I think it's mathematically impossible that all these people can be right. I mean, there's either one God or there are millions of God, as Hindus say. I mean, you can't have it all, right? There's a logical impossibility here. We can't say, no matter what Oprah wants, we can't have all religions being literally true. So the best we can do is maybe one is true, maybe a couple are true, and the rest are wrong. So clearly, that shows that humans are capable of being wrong on this, totally wrong, as sincere, intelligent, as thoughtful as they may think they are, they can be wrong because somebody's wrong. Either Muslims are wrong or Hindus are wrong. There's either one God or there are millions of gods. There's no getting around that. And so, and believe me, by the way, for those who think, well, Hindus believe in all these gods, but it's many faces of the same God. No, it's not. Not for all Hindus anyway, because I've talked to them. I've got down to that point and made sure about that. Hindus in the streets of New Delhi, Mumbai, they tell you, no, each God is a very different, distinct, unique being. They are not all the same God. So there's no way to blend Islam with Hinduism, okay, or Christianity. And so what you get to is a situation where you go, well, let's look at this. Wow, a billion Hindus might be wrong. Or maybe, 1.6 billion Muslims are wrong, or maybe 2.5 billion Christians are wrong, or maybe they're all wrong. And I think you got to admit here at some point that this is a human phenomenon. It really is. It is possible for sensible, sane, sober, intelligent human beings to be so encultured, so wrapped up into a belief that it just feels absolutely, certainly true. And that doesn't mean it is. And that's the way I always try to reach out to people. I don't say, look, you're crazy, you're stupid. None of that's true. I mean, I never go that route because most religious people are fine. They're intelligent people, And
they're nice people.
But on this issue, just look at the world. Look at the religious landscape around you, and you can see, wow, this is a human phenomenon. We have been inventing gods for, thousands of years. And we raise our children to believe in these gods, and society reinforces it, and then we discourage questioning it and doubting it, and so we end up with this confidence that is just unjustified. So in this book, I list 50 of the common justifications I've heard for religious beliefs. And then I give the skeptics, a brief skeptics analysis of that belief, why it just doesn't hold up. And I don't claim to know for certain that none of these gods are real or whatever. I haven't looked under every rock in the universe. Who knows? My mind's open. I'm ready to be shown any day. But I point out pretty clearly, I think, that there's absolutely no good solid reason to have any confidence whatsoever that any of these gods exist.
Well, Guy, it's time for us to take a little commercial break. Can you hang on with us and wait through the commercials?
Absolutely.
All right, well, just hang on a second. We're going to take a commercial break for the listeners, pay the bills, keep the lights on kind of thing, and we'll be right back.
Here's an excerpt from Fear of Physics by Lawrence Krauss.
A physicist, an engineer, and a psychologist are called in as consultants to a dairy farm whose production has been below par. Each is given time to inspect the details of the operation before making a report. The first to be called is the engineer, who states,
"The size of the stalls for the cattle should be decreased. Efficiency could be improved if the cows were more closely packed, with a net allotment of 275 cubic feet per cow. Also, the diameter of the milking tubes should be increased by 4% to allow for a greater average flow rate during the milking periods."
The next report is the psychologist, who proposes the inside of the barn should be painted green. This is a more mellow color than brown and should help induce greater milk flow. Also, more trees should be planted in the fields to add diversity to the scenery for the cattle during grazing to reduce boredom. Finally, the physicist is called upon. He asks for a blackboard and then draws a circle. He begins.